Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to IVMF's VetNet today. My name is Ashley Cavender, and I'm the Manager of Alumni Services here at Syracuse University's Daniello Institute for Veterans and Military Family. And we are excited to partner today on this VetNet with Syracuse University's Bio-Inspired Institute. So before I pass it over to get the session started, I did want to let everyone know that this webinar is being recorded for those of you who are unable to join us live today. And also, if anyone has any questions during today's session, please type them into the chat. And after we're done with our presentation, we'll get to as many questions as possible. So now I'd like to introduce our facilitator for today's VetNet, Jeremy Steinbacher, Director of Operations for the Bio-Inspired Institute at Syracuse University. And Jeremy, over to you.
Thanks, Ashley, and thank you to you and your team for working with us on this webinar. It's been really fun putting it together with you. So as Ashley said, I'm Dr. Jeremy Steinbacher. I'm Director of Operations for the Bio-Inspired Institute. I'm unfortunately filling in today for our Director, Professor of Physics, Dr. Lisa Manning, who came down with something over the weekend and is still recovering today. The Bio-Inspired Institute at Syracuse University, together with our faculty at the SUNY School of Environmental Science and Forestry and SUNY Upstate Medical University here on the Syracuse Hill, is an interdisciplinary institute whose faculty and students investigate important problems at the intersections between biology, medicine, physics, chemistry, and engineering. And I think our most inspiring work happens at the intersections of these fields, asking and answering questions that folks in traditional scientific silos cannot answer alone. And the power of connections are one reason that we at Bio-Inspired are very excited to be partnering with the Institute for Veterans and Military Families for this addition to our webinar series. We began the webinars as a way to connect with the public during the height of the pandemic in 2020. But even as we have made so much progress against COVID, these webinars remain a valuable way to reach old and new audiences alike. And we hope that by working with IVMF and joining the VetNet series today, that we can highlight two of our faculty who are working on fundamental and applied research that has direct applications to active duty military, veterans, and military family communities. And so I'm really pleased to introduce our speakers for today. Dr. Mary Beth Monroe is an assistant professor of biomedical engineering here at Syracuse University, with a career focusing on investigating how living systems interact with synthetic materials and working on designing those tools to promote healing. Dr. Monroe received her bachelor's in engineering from Trinity University before undertaking her graduate work in biomedical engineering at Texas A&M. There, she was a graduate research fellow from the National Science Foundation, which is a very prestigious award if you haven't heard of it before. After earning her PhD, Professor Monroe was awarded yet another prestigious fellowship, a Ruth L. Kirstein National Research Service Award postdoctoral fellowship from the National Institutes of Health, which is really a mouthful. And she studied at Texas A&M Health Science Center Institute of Biosciences and Technology at the just down the road at the Texas Medical Center in Houston. After her postdoctoral appointment, she went back to Texas A&M to work for a few years as a lab manager in the biomedical device lab. After several years there, she came north to join the faculty of Syracuse in the fall of 2018 as assistant professor in the Department of Biomedical and Chemical Engineering. Across the SU Quad in Link Hall, Dr. Victor Dueñas, assistant professor of mechanical engineering, is another Southerner to make the transition north to Syracuse. He received his bachelor's in mechanical engineering from the University of Texas, El Paso, before moving across the Gulf to the University of Florida to pursue his PhD, also in mechanical engineering. Like Dr. Monroe, Dr. Dueñas joined the faculty of Syracuse in 2018 in the Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, where he founded his Bionics Systems and Control Lab. Throughout his graduate and faculty work, his primary research interests have been broadly in the areas of nonlinear and adaptive control, rehabilitation robotics, and human-robot interaction applications, which all certainly sounds very technical, but thankfully he's really great at explaining it all, as you'll soon see. So that's certainly enough from me, and I know that everyone's eager to hear about the exciting work coming from these two fabulous faculty. So please, Dr. Monroe, why don't you take it away?
All right, I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, thanks so much for the introduction. I'm really excited to talk with you today about my research which we've kind of generally labeled smart tools for hemorrhage control. And I'll describe a little bit about what that looks like for me and my lab group over the next 15 minutes or so. So my work is really motivated by uncontrolled bleeding, which causes currently about 1.5 million deaths every year. Takes up a huge portion of combat fatalities, including potentially preventable deaths on the battlefield, as well as civilian trauma fatalities. And a lot of these deaths happen before a patient can get to the hospital. And so ideally you can stabilize the bleed and get the patient safely to a hospital where then they can receive more in-depth treatment such as surgery. So current treatment options typically comprise filling the wounds with some kind of dressing material. So what you're probably most familiar with and have probably used before or seen before at the very least is gauze, which has been our gold standard for hemorrhage control for over a century now. It's inexpensive and easy to use, but as you can probably tell from the number of people that are still dying from bleeding, it's insufficient for a lot of these wounds. It doesn't sufficiently cause that bleeding to stop. It also can stick to wound walls and cause rebleeds whenever you remove it from a wound, and it doesn't do anything to protect against infection. There are a bunch of newer options that have emerged. One that you may have seen in the news over the past 5 to 10 years or so is Xstat, which is this applicator that kind of looks like a syringe that's filled with 96 little pieces of foam. And then you can stick that syringe into a wound and inject those foams, and then they expand really rapidly and fill up that wound. Xstat is more effective than gauze and it's easy to use. As you can probably kind of imagine, that syringe is pretty intuitive. However, the quick expansion and the large expansion that these undergo actually cause additional tissue damage and increase inflammation in the tissues. It again doesn't protect against infection, and you have to remove every single one of those little pieces of foam within 4 to 6 hours of application, and that takes a long time. So if we look at when people are dying from traumatic wounds, it happens. So the first hour is the primary cause of traumatic wound deaths, where people are dying from massive blood loss, and that's about half of those deaths. And then once you get past that first hour, often termed the golden hour, you have a risk over the next few days of dying from shock or hypoxia. And then in the next days to weeks after injury, we continue to have a fair portion of these deaths, primarily due to infection that occurs from those wounds that the patient received. And so my controls are not working that well. So my goal is to provide hemostatic dressings, so something to replace gauze or Xstat that could reduce these deaths from blood loss and shock, as well as infection over those longer time frames. And so when I was thinking about how to kind of approach this problem, I came up with a set of design criteria. Ideally, something is space filling, so you can kind of stuff it into a gunshot wound or an IED blast wound, and then it would fill up that irregularly shaped wound to touch all the walls and stop bleeding. Everything that you put into the body has to be biocompatible and safe. Obviously, it needs to be rapid clotting so that you can stop blood flow quickly. And then we also added in a requirement of being antimicrobial to reduce those longer term infection risks in the weeks after injury. And so to address this, my lab is using shape memory polymer or SMP foams to meet these needs. So a quick background on what shape memory polymers are. These are materials that you synthesize in a primary shape. So in this case, it's just a simple rectangle. You can heat them above a characteristic transition temperature, and by heating them, you make them softer, kind of like bubble gum is hard outside of your mouth. Whenever you heat it in your mouth, it gets softer. And so while it's softer, you can deform it into a secondary shape. So in this case, it's been stretched and twisted. And then you cool it down and it stiffens again and locks in that secondary shape, and it stays there. So you can maintain the secondary shape for long storage timeframes until you reheat it, and then it recovers back to its primary shape and returns back to its original rectangle shape. And so we use these materials, the same concept of shape memory polymers, but we make them as foams. So in this case, our primary shape is an expanded foam. It's kind of like your kitchen sink sponge. And if you look at this microscopically, the foam has pores all the way through it. They're open, so you can hopefully imagine that blood could kind of flow through these pores and get stuck in there and clot. And then we heat up these foams and we compress them radially and cool them down to make a really low profile secondary shape, which then we can store it in that secondary shape. And that secondary shape makes it easier to put it into those irregularly shaped wounds that I discussed. And the secondary shape is stable until it's exposed to water and blood at body temperature. So here's a video. This is a compressed foam, this white piece of material here, and we're exposing it to body temperature water. And you can see that foam re-expand back out to its primary shape. And importantly for us, fill up the irregularly shaped mold that it's in. And so you could hopefully imagine that would happen inside of a gunshot wound, for example, as well. And so the overall vision of these is that we would fabricate these compressed shape memory polymer foam devices that are in these low profile shapes that are easy to implant. You can then apply those compressed foams to a bleed site where they would heat to body temperature and be exposed to blood, and then expand to fill up that bleed site. And then ideally they promote rapid clotting and stabilize that bleed. So if we kind of go back to our design criteria, this material system is really nice in that it meets that space filling requirement. But the next thing we really want to make sure is biocompatibility is really key to ensure that it's safe to use in patients. And we have, over the past 10 to 15 years or so, these materials have been implanted in a number of animal models, including pigs, for up to a year. And consistently we see that shape memory polymer foams both advance healing and minimize long-term inflammation in animals. And then really more importantly, these materials have also been used or being commercialized by a company, Shape Memory Medical, for applications in aneurysm treatment and peripheral vascular disease. And in the process of receiving clearance for human use in the United States, the European Union, and Japan, this company has shown that these materials have proven biocompatibility and safety in humans and animals. And so the next kind of goal, once we know that we have a space filling material that's biocompatible, is to test how well it works in terms of clotting in an uncontrolled hemorrhage model. So just a content warning, there are some kind of bloody pictures coming up. So if you are queasy, you might want to look away for a minute. So we developed in collaboration with Gary Neiman's lab at SUNY Upstate University across the street, this lethal porcine liver injury you can see in panel A. And these are really large wounds in the pig livers that cause the pigs to die if they're left untreated within less than 30 minutes. My student Henry made this kind of gnarly tool to make these wounds. And then we treated them with clinical controls, XSTAT, which I talked to you about before, quick clot combat gauze, which is a commonly used gauze material, and our smart shape memory polymer foams. And so we've looked at a number of different measures. One of the things we looked at was active bleeding time. And we found that treatment with our foams reduced active bleeding time by 5 to 10 minutes compared to the current clinically used controls. And then that translated to increased survival rates, significantly higher survival times and survival numbers of these animals over the time frame that we tested. And so this was really exciting. We saw that our materials work better than what's currently used in the clinic. And then ideally, we can add on to that and make it even better by adding in antimicrobial properties to reduce infection risks. And so to do that, I really wanted to stay away from traditional antibiotics or drugs because of the concerns about the rise of drug-resistant infections. And so I started looking into honey, which has been used for centuries for wound healing and microprotection. And honey does a lot to help with healing. And one of the things it does is that it's a broad spectrum antimicrobial. So it prevents infections. And there's a lot of different components in honey that contribute to this, but part of it are phenolic acids, which there are a few examples shown here. These are just small molecules that actually plants make to protect themselves. And it goes into the honey and it protects the hive from bacteria, viruses, and it also serves as an antioxidant. And then for us, what's really nice about this, you don't have to worry about the chemistry too much, but these groups that I've highlighted in red are these acid groups, which we can use to incorporate these materials into our smart shape memory polymer foams. And then the other side, the ring groups, which are circled in blue, those are the components that are antimicrobial. And so we can, mess with the red groups to incorporate them into our foams while still maintaining the antimicrobial properties. And so I'll just quickly discuss how we test antimicrobial properties. So you basically grow bacteria in a media that they like to be in. And then you add your sample. So in this case, we've added a foam. And then you take a little bit of the bacteria that's been exposed to the foam and you plate it onto a kind of a gel plate that bacteria, again, like to grow on. And then you let it grow overnight. And what happens is, if you have a sample where there are no bacteria, so you can see this kind of triangle pie slice here, there's no white colonies that have shown up, then that means that the material is antimicrobial. It killed all the bacteria that were in that solution. Whereas if you have a material that's not antimicrobial, you have these little white dots show up, which are colonies of bacteria, which means that this material didn't do a good job of killing the bacteria. And so you can count the number of colony forming units, or CFUs, and that gives you an indication of how many bacteria were killed by the sample, where if you have fewer CFUs, more bacteria were killed. And so we did a lot of studies with a lot of different bacteria strains, and notably Staph aureus, E. coli, and Staph epidermidis, which are 3 really common bacteria strains that are found in infected wounds. And we did that same process I talked about on the previous slide. And we can see we used a clinical control here, which is a silver-based dressing, which did effectively kill bacteria pretty consistently. So you can see there's no colony forming units on this material. However, silver is actually cytotoxic. So in our studies, it kills the skin cells that were around in those wounds as well. Our control foam is not antimicrobial. It has a lot of colony forming units. And then by adding in a phenolic acid into our foams, we were able to reduce those colony forming units to make an antimicrobial material. So we saw this with all 3 of the strains that I show here, the reduced colony forming units shows that we can successfully synthesize antimicrobial smart shape memory polymer foams. And so kind of returning to the big picture concept of this idea or of this work, again, we would make these compressed shape memory polymer foams, which are these low profile cylinders that you could easily implant. And we could put them in some type of applicator that's easy to use. Apply them to a bleeding wound. So this is kind of our liver model shown here. Once they're exposed to body temperature blood, they expand and fill up that wound and then induce clotting while protecting against infection. And so these dressings could reduce deaths from blood loss, shock, and infection in that first month after injury. So I will close by acknowledging my excellent graduate students. The work I showed today was done by Henry Beeman, Chungling Du, and Natalie Petrick. Also my collaborators and funding sources. And I will pass it off to Victor, who focuses on the longer term impacts of these traumatic injuries that occur.
Thank you so much, Maribeth. So now what I'm going to talk is about our work on developing control systems and robotic devices for rehabilitation. So as Maribeth was saying, after people that have suffered a spinal cord injury or a traumatic brain injury, they will need to enroll into a rehabilitation program. And that would involve gait rehabilitation, that may involve arm or upper body rehabilitation. But in order to achieve that, there is a need for a highly multidisciplinary team to work together. So what I'm going to talk about now, it's about our work on integrating these algorithms and controllers for spinal cord injury rehabilitation. So after a neurological condition occurs, or such as spinal cord injury or traumatic brain injury, there's loss of motor and sensory function that limits mobility, independence, and quality of life. And because of these limitations, there are a number of needs that patients have, and these have been described and reported in literature. And in my lab, what we focus mostly is on gait rehabilitation or lower limb function, as it has been highlighted as a priority by paraplegics, in which they are looking forward to recover walking movement and trunk stability. And also for quadriplegics, we are also interested in our lab to address in the same way walking function improvement, and also providing some sensory feedback to achieve normal sensation or try to get there, since we always have these two challenges of not being able to generate action and not be able to sense or provide feedback to our nervous system after injury. So broadly speaking, in a very simplified manner, for an able-bodied individual or a neurotypical function, we have the brain connected to the spinal cord, and the spinal cord sends low-level or low-frequency signals to our muscles that generate movement, right? So, for example, here in this diagram, we have signals coming from the spinal cord to our muscles, quadriceps, and hamstrings, and then we're able to extend our leg. However, after an injury, the connections between the brain, spinal cord, and the periphery of our nervous systems becomes impaired. It becomes maybe even fully broken, and then the movement that could be carried before injury can no longer be done. And so we need to replace or restore some of these functions through rehabilitation devices and assistive devices. In summary, there are about 300,000 cases of spinal cord injury due to trauma in the US, and this imposes a very heavy burden in our health system with up to $9.7 billion per year. And then the conditions that occur after these injuries are muscle weakness, paralysis, and the ability of controlling the limb and coordinating our legs, it's severely impaired. As I was mentioning in my previous slide, sensation is degraded, and it also induces spasticity, in which we could also have involuntary movements, involuntary contractions, sorry, when we try to move our trunk or we try to move one of our limbs, which is a very debilitating condition. In addition, there are other psychological, and social effects that come after injury. So for many patients, the gold standard is still physical therapy and overground walking performed by physical therapists. In our research work on the rehabilitation robotics, we have been looking at ways to reduce the burden of therapists and improve repeatability of the gait training or gait rehabilitation. So the concept of exoskeletons or power robotics has been coming in the last decades into our world now. As you can see in this figure, exoskeletons are basically devices that attach to our body that are wearable, and those devices are able to provide body support and at the same time provide actuation, being able to help move your arms or move your legs and provide trunk support. And there's a lot of work in our community on trying to make these devices better, more wearable, and being able to translate them to the clinic. In the clinical world, as many of our attendees are that are witnessing now know that there are several commercially available wearable exoskeletons, such as the Rewalk and the Exobionics, that have been FDA approved. And currently there are many clinical trials using these devices. Of course, there are still a lot of limitations to translate them to the home or to being used as assistive devices in unstructured environments away from the clinic. But currently what we can achieve is a lot of good repeatability, being able to move our limbs to improve our range of motion along with other benefits. Of course, there's still challenges and the need of using crutches and walkers. Now, of course, as we move toward the research continuum, we would like to minimize the influence of walkers and crutches so that the person could do more. And I think this is a very exciting research area, and a lot of people like myself, we're working on improving the way these machines behave. There are other assistive and exercise strategies that are currently being developed and explored for people with spinal cord injury, and I may be missing other ones, but people who are using or interface a power wheelchair can interface a robotic arm or a robotic exoskeleton to be able to grab or feed themselves, grab an object, or being able to pinch or be able to provide some movement about their arms or hand. So this is something that's an assistive device, has also made a lot of progress. And another important area that I'm interested in, exercise cycling. So there has been a lot of work done also in stationary and mobile cycling, in which people, for example, in this image, the person could come with its wheelchair, hook them to the stationary bicycle, and then perform exercise in which the speed and the resistance of the cycle could be changed and adjusted for the patient. More recently, also other work on exercise cycling for mobile applications has been done. There's even like an Olympics now for spinal cord injury people, which has been featuring a lot of on the internet. So it's nice that these type of devices are getting their ways to our homes and clinics. Of course, this approach for research requires scientists, clinicians, physical therapies, and we as engineers collaborate with these big teams in order to implement and ensure safety of these devices. In my lab, we focus primarily on control systems and the development of the robotic device. And once we are in a more mature stage in my lab, we will surely like to start testing these at the clinic. We are primarily focused on three main things: functional electrical stimulation, hybrid exoskeletons, and FES cycling. And I'm going to describe those three projects in a concise manner. But what is a controller? So I've been using the word control system, control throughout these couple minutes, but the whole thing is that this control or controller allows the customization of gait therapy or the way that the machine behaves in the presence of a human. So if you want to think about this, is the piece of software that we need to write in a computer so that the computer can interface the robot or the machine. And of course, we use the feedback from the human in order to change how the machine behaves. So in general, you can see this loop that occurs in which we want to ensure that if the person is doing gait therapy, then we apply a desired gait pattern, or we want the therapist inputs a way in which he or she would like the person to behave. And these are desired gait pattern, right? We send that to our control algorithm or controller, in which the controller is, again, this piece of software that grabs that input from the therapist, and then that's commanded to the system. In this case, the system, it's the human interfacing the robot. And then after our controller or piece of software interfaces the system, then we're able to measure the performance, measure how fast is the person walking, how are their joints being controlled, how much assistance is being provided. And then we use all that performance and we feedback that into our controller. Okay, so this is in general the big picture of what we do. Behind these, of course, there's a lot of mathematics that I'm avoiding, but this is the big picture that how these machines are actually controlled. So the first piece of technology that we're working on is electrical stimulation. It's basically applying artificial, it's a way to evoke in artificial contractions by applying electrical currents. FES has been around for a long time for different applications and therapeutic applications. What we're focused on doing closed loop control on these FES and using it along with exoskeletons. Now, the benefit of FES is that it can improve muscle strength, it can improve bone mineral density, blood flow, and improve range of motion. And all of these are really good things that sometimes exoskeletons alone cannot achieve, right? Because here we're directly activating the muscles, and in that way, then the human is actively contributing compared to just having a machine that passively moves their legs. Of course, the big challenge is that FES induces muscle fatigue, and then there are some challenges in the control design that we'll have to overcome. But in general, FES it's a great tool for eliciting contractions, even in the presence of paralysis. So then what we do is we use our control software to combine FES with an exoskeleton. And in this way, what we achieve is that our control system unifies these two technologies in order to customize the gait pattern and ensure safety. So what we have in our lab is we have a track in this figure in the right, in that it's we have a safety harness that is attached to that track, and in that way we can provide safety protection to prevent falling. And then all of these attachments that you can see here next to the leg of the person, those are the exoskeleton links that provide assistance about the hip and the knee so that the person could achieve a coordinated treadmill walking. At the same time, we activate the muscles, and then we generate some movement, okay? So in summary, what we do, which we measure the participants' legs, measurements, their links, their moments of inertia. We quantified some data from the human. We've analyzed how the human will walk throughout the gait cycle, how they transition from swinging their leg to standing their leg during treadmill walking. And then we generate a final model in which our exoskeleton now knows where the person is going to be at any point of the gait cycle and how that person should be supported. Of course, we use a lot of dynamics and controls in order to ensure this. But again, the goal is to customize the control of these machines. And once we start controlling the machine, then the human is able to adapt to the machine, and the machine is able to adapt to the human while ensuring safety. And of course, we're collecting data in order to ensure that our device behaves in the correct way, and that both the FES and the exoskeletons are coordinating this movement basically in a very smooth way. And then to close the loop, then we quantify the performance that's in my previous slide mentioned, and then we feed back that into our algorithm. So I have here a quick video in which the person is walking. This is an able-bodied individual. Our exoskeleton starts applying hip and knee assistance, and then it's able to take some steps without, providing volition. Here I have another snippet in which the exoskeleton starts at a very slow speed, and then the machine starts to learn how the human should walk, which is the piece of software trying to understand how the human walks, and then provides the assistance. And this is an ongoing process of how to generate smooth gait patterns and how to better assist the human. Then I'm going to wrap up in the next 2 minutes with our other application, which is on cycling. Exoskeletons are great, but they're very expensive. They are trying to reduce the cost for in-home use and the clinic. But another good way to do improve function is through exercise. And there has been a lot of work done recently with the Peloton and a lot of other commercial devices in which the person is able to bring these bicycles to their house and start doing exercise. And it's exactly what we're trying to do here. So we're trying to achieve coordinated pedaling using a recumbent bicycle. And then in that recumbent bicycle, we also applied FES on the muscles. And then I'm going to talk about what algorithms we implement. But an electric motor is also attached to the chain so that the person could be assisted as needed. So if the person starts fatiguing, but the person wants to still be on the bike for a little bit longer, then the motor could intermittently help the person. And this is a very nice way of exercising and to achieve high intensity while being at home, and also being able to help to build some muscle mass and some muscle strength. So what we do is very similar to the exoskeleton project. We model the bicycle, we model the legs of the rider, we generate a piece of code, which is the control, and then we implement these in experiments, as I was telling you. We have a recumbent bicycle, we have an electric motor that helps, and then we have all these sensors that measure how fast the person is cycling and what is the resistance that the person is receiving. So I'm going to explain that now. So for example, if you had this bicycle in your house, you will input the settings on the bicycle and say, oh, I want to cycle at this speed, 50 revolutions per minute, 60 high or low speed. You can also adjust the resistance. So it will adjust how hard it is to push against the pedal. So that if you want it to be a little bit harder, then we can pump up that resistance. If you want it lower, then you can lower the resistance. You will put that into our control software, and then we will be able to change both the resistance or the torque that you will apply into the bicycle. And then you could change also the speed at which you are pedaling, which so works pretty similar as a Peloton. Here is a demonstration in which the participant is not voluntarily pedaling. The participant is getting activation of their muscles with these white pads with the FES or the electrical stimulation, and also the electric motor helps the person to achieve a coordinated pedaling. So in practice, this could help any participant, no matter their mobility or their skill level, because then we can always tune and customize these technologies. As a future work and connecting back, we would like to then test outcome measures. Currently, what we have shown is feasibility of the approaches and our algorithms. We would like to optimize how the person's interface with these devices, then transition to more mobile or dynamic environments, outdoors, and then overground walking. This will entail a lot of additional work, but we are working with clinicians at the Syracuse VA Medical Center with Dr. Steve Rose to start transitioning this type of technology with his patients. And we're also trying to work with people in industry and targeting people that are non-SCI and some other people who have experienced a stroke. So this is my information. Feel free to contact me if you want to visit my lab at Syracuse or participate in our ongoing studies. We have IRB approval, which means that all of our studies have been approved by the university, and we'll like to have you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Victor and Mary Beth. Those were really great talks. I do, again, I want to remind everyone that you can enter questions in the chat, and Ashley will be helping to moderate those. I've got some technical questions I'd like to ask, but I'd like to start things off with sort of a more personal question, which is just that a lot of folks might not realize that as faculty members, you have a wide latitude in choosing what you work on, right? So I would like to ask both of you, what was sort of your inspiration for working on these projects, and how did you get into them, and why do you, what drives you to keep doing them? So Victor, you went last. Why don't you take it away first?
Sure. Thank you so much, Jeremy. Yeah, I think I was always intrigued about connecting engineering with medicine. I initially started as an undergrad working on a prosthetic device, which was like a prosthetic foot, which is a completely different problem for amputees. So I was able to see the impact, and that motivated me to pursue a PhD degree and become a faculty member. But also, I tested some of these algorithms in the hospital when I was a PhD student. And I'll never forget whenever I put my electrodes and my bicycle algorithm, and I saw a veteran who was paralyzed to pedal the bicycle. So that was a very impactful moment, and just to see the impact that these technology can make, it's something inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I've been working in kind of the broad field of biomaterials, which is making materials to improve human health since graduate school. Jeremy mentioned that I was at Texas A&M for a few years before coming up here to SU. And while there, I was working in a laboratory with the founder of the company that I mentioned in my presentation, Shape Memory Medical. And so I was working with them to commercialize these foam materials for aneurysm treatment and peripheral vascular disease. And both of those applications require, one of the benefits of the system is that it would stabilize blood clots in those aneurysms, for example. And so I started thinking about other applications we could extend this to, and started looking into hemorrhage control. I connected with some researchers at the Institute for Surgical Research in San Antonio while I was there. And I was honestly totally shocked, blown away by the number of people that are still dying just from bleeding. And then how quickly those deaths happen, and how just a simple solution to stopping those bleeds and stabilizing them so you can get the patient to the hospital can make a huge impact. And so, it kind of spurred what I was doing. And I started working with those DoD researchers, which was really helpful to get their input on kind of what practically they would be able to use on the battlefield. And that's guided a lot of what we've done since then.
Great. Thank you both for sharing. I did have a question about that, actually. So both of you have applications that are potentially dual use, which means that they're both military and civilian applications. Mary Beth, you just mentioned that you've worked with some Department of Defense folks. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about how that has worked, and what your experience is like as a university professor working with a government agency, or of course I'd be happy to get into any ideas about working with private companies that I'm sure people are interested, if either of you have done that.
Yeah, one of the big, I'm a biomedical engineer, so I don't ever want to make anything that would never be used. And so anytime I have a new idea, I try to connect with a clinician that's in that area to talk about kind of what their needs are and talk about my ideas and see if that would actually be, feasible to be used in the clinic. So I have, I try to consistently interact with clinicians as much as possible. And one of the things that really struck me when I started working with the DoD clinicians is everything is a lot more black and white. Like, you save the patient. There are less, concerns about prolonged tourniquet use. I think civilians don't use tourniquets for very long because they're worried about limb loss and nerve damage. And the DoD is like, we have to keep the patient alive. And so those concerns are really secondary to keeping the patient alive. And so I think that's one of the biggest things that struck me between working with DoD clinicians versus, civilian clinicians. But the needs are comparably high in both groups in terms of hemorrhage control. Traumatic wounds are happening. We have, mass shooting events that we're hearing about in the news, which improved hemorrhage control options that are easily accessible in a first aid kit in a classroom can make a big difference. And so, those needs really drive me, and I think try to motivate me to make sure everything I'm working on is practical and clinically could be used in the clinic.
Right. Yeah, it's great to keep in mind that we always have to know what the customer actually wants, and what will actually get used and be valuable to the folks who are actually going to use it. It's hard here and on campus to keep that in mind all the time. Victor, what about you? You mentioned that some of these exoskeletons, there are a handful that are approved by other companies. It sounds like your integration with the electrical stimulation is really sort of maybe the next big thing. So have you explored any commercialization pathways, or do you know of companies that are trying to do this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, kind of what you're saying, being sometimes here in Syracuse University, it's kind of like being isolated from the patients, but through our collaboration with Dr. Brose, who is currently in the meeting, and the Syracuse VA, we have tried to start tackling and addressing some of the questions and about, thinking about how the machine should actually be controlled in a more human-like way, right? Because as robotics person and controls person, we can write math all day long and all this software, and sometimes we lose track of that. So starting to think about how people fatigue, how people, how to take care of their spasticity problem when they have involuntary contractions, and we would like to ensure safe pedaling or safe walking. So the integration of these technologies to addressing and customizing the behavior in order to address these very specific clinical problems has been facilitated through our collaboration with Dr. Brose, and it's a long way to go. Interesting story is that one of my former linemen from Florida, he started a company from the cycling project, and now he's commercializing the MyoCycle, which some of you may have heard, and which means that it's great, right? All the research that we do actually makes it to the clinic, and now he got FDA approval, and all our algorithms that we did in our labs, now they are there, and they are in the houses of people using these bicycles. So absolutely, I think there's a lot of challenges and in the clinical work, but we're also trying to understand some basic knowledge, some basic science with on the robotic side and on the control system side. So it's always they go hand by hand, but we're very excited to be part of this community.
Yeah, and we're actually purchasing a MyoCycle right now. So it's for our spinal cord injury unit at the VA. So I think it's, coming from the clinician investigator side, it's wonderful to be able to collaborate with the engineers like Victor. And Victor is getting down here to the VA and meeting some spinal cord patients on the regular now. I think he joined inpatient rounds last week, right, Victor? So that was great. I think that one thing that I've heard from working with engineers over the years is that it's really valuable to get out there and talk to the patients, talk to the people with the spinal cord injuries. That will help to guide your thought process for designing your intervention, rather than thinking, well, this is my background in this area, so I'm going to design this and hopefully it'll be useful. To talk to the patients and say, what bothers you? What really, problems do you have with the current approaches, and how can we fix it? Then that will make your grant application automatically applicable to the patients, really hit that those categories that they're looking for. So it's great to have you, Victor.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, it's very cool to hear how closely linked both of you are to actual end users. My training is as a chemist, and I always felt like the applications we talked about were very far away, right? So from us on the basic research side, it's a really it's inspiring to hear these stories about you all working so closely to the sort of the front lines. I'm going to transition a little bit to something that Victor mentioned, that you were really inspired as an undergraduate researcher to follow this pathway. So zooming back out now, I'm interested if you could just tell our audience a little bit about the role that Syracuse University students and maybe postdoctoral associates, how they interact with your work, and what they do in the lab, just, what's the impact that a graduate or even undergraduate student can have in your groups?
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. I think that's a great question, because I think that's at the core of why we do what we do in academia. If I didn't want to interact with undergrads and grads, I'd probably be working in a company or in a big biomedical group. But it's crucial, being inspiring the next generation of undergraduate researchers and PhD students. In my lab, actually, everything that we have done, we have built everything and code everything with undergraduates and graduate students without postdocs. So it has been a very nice, directly led by students projects. It comes from like putting the bolt in the exoskeleton to like, let's make the motors work, let's code the entire software. So it has been huge. And I think Syracuse University has empower us to, have an active research laboratory and engaging students through research REU opportunities in the summer and, supporting
That's
our students.
So I'm just going to jump in. That's a research experience for undergraduates.
Correct.
For folks that don't know the acronym.
That's absolutely right. So, so yeah, I think these opportunities at SU has been instrumental for our students to, from designing in 3D these devices to actually make them work. So it has been definitely a great path, and I'm sure Mary Beth has a similar story.
Yeah, absolutely. So all the data I showed. The animal study that was done by a resident in upstate, but otherwise all that data was collected by my students. They do all the work. I just, write grants and mentor them and try to teach them how to be good researchers. So they are hugely instrumental. And I agree with Victor. If I didn't want to work with students, I'd have another job. This is why I do what I do. And they make significant contributions to what we're doing. And it's just a huge privilege, I think, to be able to watch them grow and develop into independent researchers in the time that they're in my lab. It's a lot of fun. It's my favorite part of my job, for sure.
Yeah, great. Thanks to both of you. We appreciate the force multiplication that comes from training the next generation of scientists and engineers. We've had a question come in the chat from Rob Enslin. I'll just read it here. What is the role of theoretical research in your applications? Is there a need to link to theoretical physicists, mathematicians, or engineers? I'm not sure what theoretical engineers are, but Mary Beth, maybe you can take that one.
Yeah, so I will kind of preface my answer by saying my lab is fully experimental. So everything we do is, we don't do any kind of modeling in my lab. But we do sometimes use modeling. Like, for example, there's a study that looked at how blood moved through the foams that we've made and how it interacted with those foams. And that model is useful for kind of rationally designing foam pore structures that we know will interact with blood in the way we want them to. And then in terms of kind of just more generally, rather than not necessarily theoretical, but fundamental research, a lot of what we do is chemistry. And so we do, we make new polymers that nobody's ever made before. And we, use new reactions to give those polymers new functionalities. And so we're building upon like a lot of fundamental polymer science and materials work, but always with the end goal of applying it to a specific clinical need.
Right, thank you. How about you, Victor?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that, yeah, all our stuff, similar to what Mary was saying, we're also very experimental. We build a robot, we put a human and in the loop in our systems. But of course, in order to even be able to bring a human in the loop, we need to develop a lot of math. So we work a lot with control systems. So it's a lot of dynamic modeling and developing stable control systems, which basically what that means is, even without experimenting with a human, we will know that our algorithm is not gonna be unsafe, rather it's gonna be safe. And we prove that using nonlinear theory. So yeah, we half of our time is writing fancy math, and half of our time is actually experimenting with humans and testing this, which is very nice, because I've seen that a lot of the novelty in the algorithms comes from observations that we have while doing experiments, right? Like we see, it was like, oh, we wish that this algorithm will run a little bit smoothly in this portion of the gate cycle. Oh, okay, well, maybe we should capture that in our mathematics. So both of them talk to each other, which is a very nice loop. But yeah, definitely a lot of control theory and you know, a lot of coding, but definitely very, very enjoyable.
Great, thanks, and thanks, Rob, for that question. I've got a related question about that coding stuff, as you put it. I noticed in that one diagram you had AI over there, so that's of course artificial intelligence. That's been increasingly in the news, even like the popular science, or maybe not even the science section, right? But like right out in the front page of newspapers, right? What is the role of AI? How's it going to shape our lives? And so I was just wondering if you could maybe explain a little bit about how that applies to your research, Victor, and you know, maybe demystify what that means for folks.
No, definitely. I think yeah, no, I think that's an ongoing question in all conferences. We just came back from a conference, and that's a big question about how deep learning influence autonomy, right? So that was like the plenary talk, and I think there's a lot of interesting challenges in which, sure, we need to ensure that the person is safe and stable, and at the same time we have to achieve a good level of customization. So I think machine learning is great at you know, generating models for us so that we could customize better how the machine behaves. In fact, we're already implementing machine learning algorithms in using what's called adaptive-based control, in which basically what that does is, you know, you start using the device and the algorithm start learning how you behave. It's like, oh, maybe the person is not really walking the right way. Then we should collect data while the person is walking, and then adjust how for the next future, you know, gait cycles or pedaling, you know, crank cycles, then the machine could improve. So in some way, that's how we incorporate in our research, right? Like, how can these machines learn from how the human is doing and then being able to adapt? For example, we have a recent result in which if the person is not able to cycle at a desired speed or it starts fatiguing, then the machine will automatically understand that the person is not able to do that and then adjust the speed so that the person is able to keep a smooth pedaling. So it's a lot of adapting and learning from each other.
Right, okay. So that's really the heart of it, is just the adaptability to a computer program that traditionally computer programs haven't had, right? They've been very rigid, and now they're adaptable.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And,
okay.
and I guess the only thing that I would say is a lot of people then were starting to think about, you know, where I think that machine learning is going to be more powerful is once we take all these devices out of our labs and then we put those in their people's homes. And then that could help a lot for data collection, for synchronization, for the therapists to be able to interface with the patient.
So then it's big data as well.
Correct.
As
Correct.
AI, right?
Then it connects with that.
Yeah, and another question came in that's related from Karen Lowe. She said, is it only able to learn one gait pattern at a time, or can it learn? And how do you plan to make the switch from walking to running, example, and then stopping, right? So all of these complex human motion patterns.
Well, that's a great question. That's something we're working on currently. I think if you guys have seen the mainstream media on those like dog robots and bipeds from like Boston Dynamics. So interesting enough, all our control algorithms work similarly to those algorithms in some way or another. So we're making the transition, and there's a lot of new work that we have done in which it would allow the controller to be able to say, okay, now we need to crank up the speed, or maybe the person should be able now to walk faster. As for example, the person goes to a rehab program and now the person could actually walk faster now, so that the machine could actually adapt to it. So yeah, there's definitely, we're working on that. There's a lot of algorithms and optimization work that has been done in order to ensure these smooth transitions. And I think it's a very exciting field now.
I'm still muted. Great. Mary Beth, I wanted to ask you one more sort of technical question. I haven't heard that many scientific talks with bubblegum in them. And I think that's a great example. You know, the whole idea of a shape memory polymer is kind of far out, I think. I was just wondering if you can tell us about any other examples of shape memory materials that we might know about and or, you know, that are cutting edge, still in the research phase, and what, you know, what other applications the future holds for those?
Yeah, I always have everyday examples of everything I talk about. And I didn't say it, I realized I didn't say it in my presentation, but the two examples I often give that people interact with in kind of their regular life probably that are shape memory polymers are hair and clothing. So my hair's primary shape is kind of wavy. I can use a flat iron to add heat and pressure to make it straight and put it into a secondary shape. And it stays in that secondary shape until I wash it, or it's not that humid here, but if I were in Texas, it would get humid and go back to its primary wavy shape. And your clothes are the same thing when you iron them. Also shrink wrap and shrinky dinks. Those are shape memory polymers that you may have interacted with. Just kind of get a visual of those. In terms of kind of more high tech or medical applications of shape memory polymers, the foams that I'm using are being commercialized and are being put in patients right now, which is awesome. And those are actually being delivered via catheter. So the compressed shape is compressed so much that it fits within a catheter that can go in through the vasculature up to the patient's brain, and then deliver the foams into the aneurysm site where they expand and fill up that aneurysm and cut off blood flow to reduce the risk of rupture. But there's also some technologies like self-tightening sutures where you would suture it in and they heat and they crimp, kind of compress and pull the wound edges together to help with healing. Yeah, so those are kind of some, you know, common and less common examples of shape memory polymers, but they're kind of all over the place. Another thing that I like to draw, we make our foams through a gas blowing process, which is similar to how couch cushions are made, but it's really the exact same process we use to make cakes. So you have things, and you have an acid and a base in your cake that react together and form bubbles, and then you trap those bubbles inside of your cake as it's cooking, and you have this porous foam cake. And we do the exact same thing to make our foams.
Great, nice. Thanks for connecting that to things that we can all relate to. Well, we are getting really close to 2, and we don't want to run over. I've been trying to keep an eye on the chat, and if there's no further questions, I'd just really like to thank Mary Beth Monroe and Victor Duenas again for their great talks and their time today and putting these presentations together. And I will pass this back to Ashley from IVMF to wrap things up.
Thanks, Jeremy. And yeah, I echo the thanks to you both. I mean, those everyday examples and really how you guys both presented your work really helped, at least me, to understand a little bit more, and I'm sure our audience as well. So really thank you for that, for taking the time to do that today. And thank you, Jeremy, for leading this conversation. For everyone attending this webinar, we are coming to a close. So I just want to remind everyone that this is being recorded. So we'll share this recording afterwards to share with your network, to share with those who may not have been able to join us today. And we'll send that out to all of those that have registered, as well as a short survey, just to let us know any feedback from this session, as well as, you know, maybe if you have additional questions or some topics that you may be interested in learning about in the future. We'd love to hear your feedback. So thank you all for joining us again today, and I hope everyone has a great week. All right, thank you all.
Thanks.